Welcome to another episode of Better Business, Better Life. I'm your host, Debra Chantry-Taylor. I'm passionate about helping entrepreneurs and their leadership teams get what they want out of business and life. On the show, I invite successful business owners and expert speakers to share their successes. They are open and honest about the highs and lows of business and also life as a business owner. We want to share those learnings with you to inspire you, but also to help you avoid some of the common mistakes. My hope is that you take something from each of these short episodes that you can put into action to help you get what you want, not only out of your business, but also your life.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Better Business, Better Life. I'm your podcast host, Debra Chantry-Taylor, and today I'm doing one of the 4 out of 5 podcasts that I'm pre-recording so that they can be launched while I'm away on holiday and attending conferences over in Australia. So this is number 4 out of 5, and today we'll be talking about how to lead world-class meetings. So I don't know about you, but I've certainly had my fair share of time in organizations where meetings were just an absolute nightmare. I spent 18 months for my sins working in Auckland City Council, and we had meetings upon meetings upon meetings. In fact, one week we actually did an exercise and just added up how much time we spent in meetings. It was 36 and a half hours. So you can imagine the average work week is about 37 and a half hours. So we weren't getting much done outside of those meetings. But it wasn't the time committed to those meetings that was a problem. It was the fact that nothing ever seemed to come out of them. And so when I first discovered EOS and I discovered their level 10 meetings, it was an absolute blessing. It's like, thank goodness, finally there's a way to make meetings actually make sense. So again, I don't know what your experience is, but the universal kind of problems with meetings is really about inefficiencies. I mean, they're often the distractions, they interrupt your real work, they put you behind schedule. They can be really sporadic. You only meet when there's a fire to put out and it's a painfully chaotic meeting trying to fight that fire. They're not really focused. Meetings are filled with tangents, sidebar conversations and wandering discussions that never arrive at any solutions, or they're filled with unnecessary people. There's always at least one person who didn't need to attend, which adds to operations costs and it reduces overall productivity. So that's kind of the universal problem with meetings. And there's a whole lot of other stuff that happens as well. Meetings for meeting's sake, people not turning up on time, meetings running over, so they fall into the next meeting that you've got coming up. It's just generally, if meetings aren't run well, they can be a real hassle. So EOS has discovered that, if you actually ask business leaders, on average, they rate the effectiveness of their leadership team meetings as about a 4 out of 10. So that's pretty low, and there's lots of room for improvement there. So how do we fix this problem? Well, we talk about leading world-class meetings here at EOS. And what we mean by world-class meetings is actually having a meeting that is productive, that will save you time, and will actually put time back into your schedule. So we consider meetings to actually be a time management tool rather than a time wasting tool. And so in EOS, we call this kind of meeting a level 10 meeting. The reason being is we're going to take your quality of your company's meetings from a 4 up to a 10. And a level 10 meeting is kind of where all the magic happens. Most of the traction that the company actually has is gained in these level 10 meetings. And as you and your team come together for 90 minutes a week, you'll save time by avoiding miscommunication, knowing what the right hand is doing, what the left hand is doing, preventing train wrecks, solving real people issues, and keeping your key people accountable. You may even look forward to these regular meetings. Wouldn't that be a nice surprise? So I'm going to talk in this podcast about what we can do to actually bring you into a level 10 type meeting and start leading what we call world-class meetings. So implementing a weekly meeting pulse for your leadership team will actually help you to gain traction. It helps your team stay focused. It helps us solve those issues. It improves our communication. And if you get this put throughout the whole organization, in theory, as a leader, the maximum amount of time you'll spend in meetings is actually 2 90-minute meetings a week. Now, one of these might be shorter than 90 minutes, but certainly no longer than that. So that's 3 hours of meetings a week where everything can actually be handled. And the 5 kind of key points of a weekly meeting pulse is that we have to have the following sort of 5 criteria. So the meeting must be on the same day, every week on the same day, at the same time. And the reason that we do this is we want to make sure that everybody has it in their calendar. There's no excuses for not knowing when the meeting is. When you change the day or the time, it becomes challenging for somebody to understand when that next meeting is. So same day, same time. The third point is about having the same agenda. And And when I mention this to people in the initial stages of the EOS, they go, well, how can you run the same agenda across multiple meetings? Sales and marketing, how they run the same agenda as a finance team? But in actual fact, when I share with you this agenda, you'll see that it actually makes perfect sense, because the meeting should be about solving issues and walking away with action points and accountability. So in actual fact, having the same agenda makes perfect sense. What will change is what comes up in those issues lists, but still the same agenda. The fourth point is it must start on time. And this is really, really important. As soon as you start sliding into holding meetings that maybe slip and don't start at the right time, you're creating an expectation that they won't. And so we sort of say you need to be there early. If the meeting starts, say Monday at 10 a.m., you need to be there at 9:55, sitting around chatting. So come 10 o'clock on the dot, the person who runs the meeting, generally your integrator, will actually say, right, let's get started, and everybody is then ready to go. And the last point is, of course, it must end on time. And this may seem really obvious, but it's important that our meetings do not run over, because we need to make sure that we're actually ready to go into the rest of our day once we have finished this meeting. So these 5 points, same day, same time, same agenda, start on time, end on time, will actually create a routine. They'll optimize your efficiency and they'll trim the fat for your meetings. Now, one of the things I find when I first mention this with an EOS leadership team, and I say, right, let's pick a day. We might say Monday, 10 a.m. is going to be our level 10 meeting day. Inevitably, somebody in the team will actually say, hey, look, you know what? I agree that's a great time to do it, but I can't make the next 2 or 3 meetings. I've got appointments. And the way that I always respond to this is, that's okay. You go ahead and you have those appointments if you need to. We're going to go ahead with this meeting regardless. And we will hold the meeting and we will work through the agenda and we will deal with issues and we will come out with outcomes and to-dos from that meeting. And we'll just fill you in afterwards. So don't worry, that's absolutely fine. Because there should be only 2 reasons that you ever miss a level 10 meeting. The first one is if you're dead. I'm sorry, but that is a pretty valid reason for not attending a meeting. And the second one, believe it or not, is actually if you're on holiday. We completely endorse having holidays. So if you're on holiday, and that can include sick leave and things as well, if you're on holiday or you're dead, they're the 2 reasons you miss the meeting. Otherwise, the meeting goes ahead, regardless if you've got 1 out of the 8 team members or all 8. It must go ahead. This has to start to create a meeting cadence in your environment that people know this will go ahead regardless. And what I generally find is those people who said, I can't make the next 2 or 3 meetings, they might miss one, but I guarantee they'll clear their diaries for the rest. So once you've got that day and that time set, we're going to go through the same agenda every time. We're always going to start on time. We're going to end on time. And this is how the level 10 meeting agenda looks. So it really is a very, very simple agenda. And like many, many things at EOS, it seems so simple, you wonder how it could possibly work. All I will say is please trust the process, give it a go, see what happens. I promise once you start actually getting these things working properly in your business, this will make a fundamental difference the way that you actually run your business. So level 10 meeting agenda, I'm going to give a link in the podcast that will give you the opportunity to download the agenda, as well as a really great ebook, which is talking about the same things I'm talking about here. So the agenda is designed to actually keep you focused. It helps you spot those developing problems, drives you to solve them, and it was been created to optimize your meeting efficiency. So this is how the meeting agenda actually looks. The first agenda point is what we call the segue. And this is just a 5-minute kind of reporting part where we're saying, hey, give us your good news and professionally and personally for the week. And we go round the table and everyone in the leadership team has a couple of minutes to kind of go, not a couple of minutes, a minute maybe, to say, hey, what's my good news and professional and personal good news for the week? And this gives us a chance to start thinking about working on the business rather than in the business, but it also starts the meeting on a really positive note. So right from the beginning, we're actually talking about positives in the business. What I love about this too is you get to find out things about your leadership team you may not have known. So they will share something personally good news from the last week, and it may be something you had no idea about. They might be a photographer in their spare time. They might be trying really hard to get healthier, and they'll share what they've been doing on that. So it's a great way to start the meeting on a positive note and get people thinking about working on the business rather than it. The next agenda point is the scorecard. And this is where we go through the EOS scorecard, which is a scorecard that has somewhere between 3 and 15 things we measure every single week. And we measure it on a rolling 13-week basis. And in this, we're looking for whether or not we're on track or off track with our scorecard measurables, but also any trends as well. So in this 5-minute section of the level 10 meeting agenda, what we'll actually do is go to the scorecard line by line. So this time we've got a revenue measurable. And all we're asking is, are we on track or are we off track? If we're on track, it's a chance to go, yay, well done us, let's keep moving. If it's off track, we're going to drop this down to the issues list. This is a really, really important part of the meeting. We do not want to get caught up in discussion at this point around the scorecard, because what will happen is you'll go down a rabbit hole, you'll start talking off on a tangent, you'll start getting into the nitty gritty, and it might well be this is not the most important thing that's happening in your business right now. So with the scorecard, pretty simple, 5 to 15 measurables. Are we on track? Are we off track? If it's off track, drop it down to the issues list, and we'll come back to that issues list shortly. The next agenda point is a ROC review. And again, this is very similar to a scorecard review. We're looking at the company ROCs and the individual ROCs. And all we're asking at this point in the agenda, it's a 5-minute section, is are we on track or off track for our company and individual ROCs? And again, if we're on track, that's fantastic. We can go, yay, well done us. And if we're off track, we're going to drop it down to the issues list. Again, no discussion at this point, just drop it down, drop it down. Make sure it's all there in the issues list, which we'll discuss in our issues section of the agenda. The other thing about the ROC review is you might sort of think somebody says that they're on track, and you're thinking, well, I don't think they're really on track. So as a leadership team, you have the opportunity to go, hey, I wouldn't mind getting an update on that. So that update would then drop down to the issues list, and we can look at that when we actually look at our issues. So that's another 5 minutes ROC review, just like the scorecard. Are we on track? Are we off track? If we're off track, drop it down to the issues list. The next part is our customer and employee headlines. And this is again another 5-minute section, really, really short and sharp. And all we're doing here is we're looking at whether or not there's anything we should be aware of from a customer or an employee point of view. Have we just scored a major contract with a client? Do we have a client issue? Employee headlines, is there something really good going on with our employees, or is there something we should be aware of? And sometimes these things, they're called headlines, they're very short, very sharp. They're either going to be just for your information, or it could actually lead to an action point or an issue that has to be solved. So it could be that Monica is leaving and that leaves a hole in our team. That would be dropped down to the issues list for further discussion. If it's just for your information, we might say it's a cascading message to share around the team. And the last part before we go into this issue solving part of the meeting is what we call our to-do list. And this is actually baked into the level 10 meeting agenda every single week. And it's a very, very quick 5 minutes. So when we leave every meeting, every issue that is solved has to have a to-do or 2 or 3 that fall out of it. And we keep track of these on a regular basis. What we're looking for is, are we getting these to-dos done? Because to-dos are 7-day items. So when you set a to-do from an issue, you expect to have this solved within 7 days. So we're reviewing this weekly. And what we're now saying is, hey, we had this list of to-dos from last week. How did we go with it? And basically it is, let's just say you've got 10 to-dos. We're aiming to get 90% done. So we go through them one at a time, very, very quickly, just reviewing. Is it done? Yes or no? Is it done? Yes or no? We total it up and we're aiming for 90% to be done. If 90% isn't being done, you've got an issue. And what is the issue? Drop it down to the issues list. We'll need to discuss that in the issues section. And then we get to the most exciting part of the meeting, which can be challenging at first, but it's a really great way to actually get to the root cause of the challenges or opportunities in your business. So this section is called IDS. It's the issue solving track. And the IDS is a tool that we teach in EOS, which is all about how to solve issues effectively and at their root cause. So what the IDS stands for is identify, discuss, and solve. And the most important thing about this is actually identification. As humans, we tend to spend a lot of time discussing, but we need to actually, first of all, make sure we're discussing the right issue. Because we can very quickly jump to conclusions and think this is the issue and go to solve that issue, when in actual fact, a few more questions, I call it the curious child. So why does that happen? So who's responsible for that? What happens when this happens? Asking these really curious child questions gives you a chance to really identify what the issue is. But before we get into that, you've got a great big long list here of issues. It's human nature to want to start at the top. But we don't do that because we need to make sure this 60 minutes of issue solving is absolutely laser sharp focused on the most important things in the business. So we've got our list of issues. The very first thing we do before we even start solving any of these issues is we go through and we actually rank the top 3 issues. And as a leadership team, we go, what are the 3 most important issues that we have on this issues list? And just remember, issues are not always negatives. It could be an opportunity. So don't see this as only being challenges or problems. It could be an opportunity. It could be something that we actually want to explore in terms of doing better. So we go through and we choose those top 3 issues and we number them 1, 2, and 3. And then what we do is we start to work through them in that order, of course. So number 1, we go, right, identify what is the real issue here. And the issue is stated as, let's just say, we've got an ops capacity issue. We then go in and we're going to go, right, what is the real issue here? And we ask questions. What do you mean by that? Oh, we haven't got enough people to actually work in the operations department. Oh, okay. Why is that? Well, we've got a lot more extra work. Oh, why do we have more extra work? Well, since COVID, we've had some issues with things being delivered, which means we've now got people having back orders and pre-orders in the system, and our system can't cope with that. And so therefore we have to have more staff to actually deal with it. Oh, okay. And so what we're actually saying, if I use this as an example, is we actually have a systems issue. And it's like, yeah, maybe that might be the case. Once we've discovered it's a systems issue or a people issue, whatever the issue might be, and we feel like we've asked enough questions to really identify the actual issue, we then work as a team to discuss it. And we discuss all the possible options. So in this particular example, an option could be that you actually hire more people. It's a perfectly good option. But that comes with challenges, as you know. People cannot be hired and fired simply or easily. So we have to think about, in actual fact, what is that the best solution? Another solution might be that we could actually change the software to cope with this new world that we live in post-COVID. So if we do that, what does that look like? Oh, that could require a couple of weeks of development. And would that take the issue away? Yes, it might. Okay, great. And there may be 3 or 4 different possible solutions, but we discuss it as a team, and everybody, no matter who is accountable for this issue, has a chance to have some input. This is what I love about this meeting. Although you have accountability for a certain area, this is using the power of the greater mind, right? So we're working for the greater good as a team to actually get this issue solved. So we're looking at all the different possibilities, we're discussing all the possibilities, and then as a team, we agree on a solve. And what I mean by a solve is we're going to go, okay, of the options that are presented to us here, what is the best option for this business moving forward? And ordinarily, there's a really obvious answer there, which most of them will actually agree on. And if not, then that's okay. We'll go to a vote. And once we go to a vote, we'll come up with hopefully an answer from that. If you get stuck in a tie break and you really can't make a decision, this is where the role of the integrator comes in. And the integrator is there to actually hold that tie break and make the final decision because they are ultimately accountable for that business plan. So we keep doing this. And once number 1 has been ticked off, we tick it off. And of course, when you've solved an issue, a to-do comes out of it. You cannot solve an issue without having something that has to be done. And so in this example, if we chose to go down the software development route, the first to-do might be, let's go and get a quote from our IT department to understand what is required to put this change in place. And that's a to-do, which is a 7-day item. So that's something that can be done in 7 days. You can't walk away from that particular discussion going, we're going to completely change the software as a to-do. It's not going to happen in 7 days. You're being unrealistic. So you get your to-dos that come out of it, explore the options for the software, get a price for the software. These are to-dos that have to be done. And then we close off that issue and move to number 2. And we follow exactly the same process. So we go through and we identify, we discuss, and then we solve. And we keep going through. Once you finish the first 3, you go back into your list, and you can have a list that has 70, 80, 100 issues, doesn't matter. It's important we identify the top 3 issues and make sure they're the 3 issues we're talking about first. So we keep going through this process, creating to-dos, putting them onto our to-do list until we hit our 60-minute mark. And once we've got to that 60-minute mark, we're then going to say, right, that's it for today, team. Hopefully you've solved a number of issues. Sometimes you only solve 1. But the important thing is if you've identified them and put them in the correct order of importance, you've solved the most important things first. So once we've done that, we're going to go into a conclusion. And the conclusion is really, really simple. It's a 5-minute round table. So we recap the to-do list. The integrator will usually say, hey, look, from this week's meeting, we've now got this to do. And this to do is for you, Debra. This to do is for you, Steve. This to do is for you. And we just actually read them out one by one and who is accountable for it. And the psychology behind this is actually having somebody commit to what they've actually just agreed to. And this is a chance for them, if they don't agree, to have something to say about it. The next part is cascading messages. What do the rest of the team need to know? Cascading up or down, what else do the other teams need to know? And this might be, hey, look, We know that Monica was leaving. We're now going to look to advertise a new role. We're going to look at the accountability chart first and then go out there and look for that new role. Let's just let people know that. Or, hey, let people know we just scored a great contract with a new client. Let's celebrate that with the team. And then finally, the very last part of the meeting is what we call the rating. So we rate the meeting on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is shit, which is a technical term, and 10 is awesome. And this is where teams tend to get a little bit confused. They go in with a very subjective point of view. I thought the meeting was an 8. Why is that? I didn't really like it. That's not the way we score this meeting. What we do is we say we start with a score of 10. When you first start the meeting, you have 10 points to lose, if you like. You only take a point off if you don't do something right in the meeting. So this could be someone turns up late. Somebody played on their phone. The real issue wasn't discussed. We had an elephant in the room and it wasn't even brought up. And you take off points for each of those things. If you go over time, you take off a point. And then you give it a legitimate score based on the 10 at the beginning minus the points for things we didn't do. If we score this meeting anything less than an 8, because we are accountable and responsible for this meeting as leaders, we have to give some examples of what we can do to improve the meeting. So this is about taking personal responsibility and accountability. You can't say, I didn't like the meeting because you guys spent too long discussing blah, 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 blah. I'm sorry, this is a meeting of adults, of leaders, and we have to go, right, we as a team perhaps didn't get to the real issue. What can we do next time to ensure that we do that? And then once we finish that, the 5-minute kind of wrap up, that's the meeting closed. The cascading messages get sent out, the to-dos get sort of put into the various people's to-do lists. We use software called EOS One, which is fantastic for running these meetings, keeping track of the issues, keeping track of the to-dos. And it means you can actually put issues in as they come to light as well. So for example, that 2 a.m. wake up in the middle of the night, that issue, I've got to get that on the list, pop it into your software. It's there for the next meeting. Now, most people say, okay, this is great. We've got this meeting, but what about all the stuff that comes up throughout the week? And it's absolutely true. There's bound to be stuff that comes up in your business throughout the week. The great thing about this is you actually say to the person who brings that issue to you, hey, can this wait till the level 10 meeting? And most times it can. Not much happens in a week, or not much needs to be resolved in a week. But if it's more urgent than that, well, then it's their accountability to actually get it solved. And if they can't solve it, then they bring it to the level 10 meeting. So this is all about giving the accountability back to the person who's accountable for that area and saying, you find a way to solve this. If you can't solve it, bring it to this meeting and we will help you to solve it. And it's all about helping as a leadership team to solve the issues that can't be solved by people accountable. So that is, in a nutshell, a very brief nutshell, the level 10 meeting. As I said, I will put a link in the comments. It will take you to the PDF, the ebook on how to lead world-class meetings. And also from that, you can download the level 10 meeting, but also you can check out the EOS One software, which actually helps to manage all this as well. If you've got any questions, feel free to email me. My email is in the description of the podcast. And that's pretty much it for me. So until next week, have a fantastic week. Go run some awesome meetings, and I will see you next Tuesday. Thank you.
Thanks again for joining us on Better Business, Better Life with me, your host, Debra Chantry-Taylor. If you enjoyed what you heard, then please subscribe to this podcast and let us help you to get what you want out of business and life. Each week we release a new short episode which will give a success story and 3 takeouts to put into action immediately. These will help you take your business from good to great. The podcast is also supported by free resources, templates and useful tools which you can find at debrachantrytaylor.com. I am a trained entrepreneurial leadership and business coach, a professional EOS implementer, and an established business owner myself. I work with established businesses to help them get what they want. Feel free to contact me if you'd like to have a chat about how I might be able to help you, or if you'd like to join me as a guest on this podcast. Thanks again to NZ Audio Editors for producing this podcast. See you on the next episode.